Opening. The Thanksgiving hierarchy. Thanksgiving at my parents' house had always operated according to a carefully maintained social hierarchy, but this year the seating arrangement made the family pecking order embarrassingly obvious. The formal dining room table was reserved for successful family members. My brother David with his wife and children, my sister Monica with her corporate lawyer husband, and various relatives who'd achieved conventional markers of success. I was directed to the kitchen table. Kitchen table for disappointments, David announced with the casual cruelty he'd perfected over 34 years of being the golden child. Don't worry, Alex. At least you'll be close to seconds if you want more stuffing. The kitchen table, where children usually sat during adult gatherings, now serving as my designated spot for failing to meet family expectations. At 29, I was apparently still not worthy of dining room inclusion. My crime was running what my family considered a failed business venture, a software startup they'd never understood and consistently dismissed as an expensive hobby that prevented me from pursuing real career opportunities. Alex is still working on that app idea, Mom explained to visiting relatives, her voice carrying the patient tone reserved for discussing chronic disappointments. We keep hoping he'll realize it's time to look for stable employment. That app idea was actually TechFlow Solutions, a business process automation platform I'd been developing for 3 years. What my family didn't understand was that my failed startup had quietly grown into a company serving enterprise clients across 12 industries, with annual recurring revenue approaching $50 million. But explaining enterprise software development to my family was like describing quantum physics to kindergartners. They heard computer work and automatically categorized it as the modern equivalent of playing video games in my parents' basement. David's promotion puts him in line for regional vice president, Dad announced proudly from the head of the dining room table. 20% salary increase plus stock options. That's what happens when you follow a traditional career path. I sat at my kitchen table eating turkey and listening to David's promotion celebration, knowing that my failed app idea generated more revenue in a month than David would earn in his entire corporate career. But trying to explain software-as-a-service business models to people who measured success exclusively through corporate job titles felt futile. Monica's husband just made partner at his law firm, Mom added, ensuring everyone understood the complete family success hierarchy. Corporate law is such a stable field. Alex could learn something from people who've built real careers. Monica's husband, James, nodded knowingly from his dining room seat. The legal profession values consistency and proven track records. Technology work is so unpredictable. Like the $200 million acquisition offer I'd been negotiating for the past 6 months with one of the largest enterprise software companies in the world. Like the client contracts that had grown TechFlow Solutions from a one-person operation to a company with 47 employees and revenue that had doubled every year for 3 consecutive years. But my family had no context for understanding any of that. They saw someone who worked from home, didn't wear a suit to an office, and hadn't followed the conventional path of corporate employment that defined success in their worldview. Alex needs to think about long-term financial security, Aunt Linda chimed in from the dining room. Playing with computers might be fun, but it doesn't build retirement savings or provide health insurance. Playing with computers. As if the enterprise automation platform that Fortune 500 companies relied on for critical business processes was equivalent to a teenager's gaming habit. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Urgent call needed from acquisition team. Final terms require approval by midnight EST. The $200 million acquisition. The deal that would validate 3 years of work and position TechFlow Solutions as a major player in enterprise software. The transaction my family would never see coming because they'd never bothered to understand what I actually built. Build up, isolation and assumptions. The Thanksgiving conversation continued around me while I sat isolated at my kitchen table, listening to detailed discussions of corporate achievements and traditional career milestones. David described his quarterly sales figures. Monica explained her latest corporate restructuring project. James analyzed market trends affecting his law firm's client base. All conversations that assumed success looked like climbing predefined corporate ladders rather than building something entirely new. The key is stability and predictable income growth, James was saying, cutting his turkey with the precision of someone who'd never questioned the conventional path. That's why traditional professions maintain their value. They provide security that entrepreneurial ventures simply can't match. Entrepreneurial ventures. He made it sound like I was selling crafts at weekend farmers markets rather than running a software company with clients in 43 states and 12 countries. My phone buzzed again with another message from my assistant. Microsoft acquisition team standing by. Need authorization to proceed with final documentation. Microsoft. The acquisition offer wasn't coming from some unknown startup. It was from one of the largest technology companies in the world, seeking to integrate TechFlow solutions into their enterprise software ecosystem. But explaining that would require my family to understand concepts like cloud computing, business process automation, and enterprise software integration. Easier to let them maintain their assumptions about my computer hobby than attempt a technical education that would fall on deaf ears. Alex has always been creative, Mom said during a lull in the dining room conversation, her voice projecting toward my kitchen table with false encouragement. Some people just need longer to find their direction. Creative. At 29, with a software company generating millions in annual revenue, I was still considered someone who needed to find direction. The technology sector is so volatile, Aunt Linda added helpfully. Remember the dot-com crash? All those computer companies disappeared overnight. Traditional businesses have staying power. The dot-com crash of 20 years ago, apparently still serving as evidence that any technology-related work was inherently unstable and unreliable. David leaned back in his dining room chair with the satisfaction of someone whose worldview had never been challenged. I told Alex years ago he should consider sales. He's got the personality for it, and there's real money in pharmaceutical sales or medical device marketing. Pharmaceutical sales. As if abandoning a $50 million revenue software company to sell medical equipment represented sensible career advice. Alex is welcome to interview at my firm, James offered generously. We could use someone in our IT support department. It wouldn't be glamorous work, but it would provide steady income and benefits. IT support. At his law firm. The offer was meant kindly, but it highlighted the massive gap between my family's perception of my capabilities and the reality of what I'd actually built. My phone rang and I saw it was my assistant calling directly rather than texting. That meant the acquisition timeline was accelerating and decisions needed to be made immediately. I should take this, I said, rising from my kitchen table. Alex, we're in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, Mom protested. Can't your computer work wait until tomorrow? It's time sensitive, I said, walking toward the back porch for privacy. Everything's always urgent with technology work, David called out dismissively. That's why traditional careers are more sustainable. You're not constantly dealing with crises. Revelation when success calls. I stepped onto the back porch and answered my assistant's call, trying to maintain professional composure while my family continued their Thanksgiving celebration inside. Alex, I'm sorry to interrupt family time, my assistant Maria said, but Microsoft needs final approval on the acquisition terms within the next 2 hours. Their legal team is standing by to execute the paperwork. What changed with the timeline? I asked, watching my family through the window as they continued discussing traditional career achievements. Their board meeting was moved up to tomorrow morning, and they want to announce the TechFlow acquisition during their quarterly earnings call. The offer terms are final: $200 million cash plus equity participation in the integrated platform development. $200 million. For the computer hobby, my family had been encouraging me to abandon in favor of pharmaceutical sales or law firm IT support. There's also media interest, Maria continued. TechCrunch wants an exclusive interview about the acquisition, and the Wall Street Journal is preparing a feature story about enterprise automation startups. I could hear the dining room conversation through the window. James explaining the importance of billable hours in legal practice, David describing his company's market expansion strategy, Monica discussing corporate governance frameworks. All conventional achievements that would be dwarfed by the acquisition announcement that would hit financial news within 24 hours. Alex, are you there? Maria asked. I'm here. Let me think about this for a moment. I understand it's a big decision, but Microsoft's acquisition offer represents unprecedented validation for everything you've built. TechFlow Solutions would become the foundation for their entire enterprise automation platform. Through the window, I watched my family's Thanksgiving celebration continue, oblivious to the fact that the disappointing relative eating alone at the kitchen table was about to close one of the largest software acquisitions of the year. "Send me the final terms document," I said. "I'll review everything and call you back in 30 minutes. Also, Alex, the Forbes reporter wants to discuss your inclusion in their upcoming 30 under 30-foot technology leaders list. Apparently, the Microsoft acquisition puts you in consideration for their cover story." Forbes 30 under 30. Cover story consideration. For the family member who needed to find direction and consider stable career opportunities. I ended the call and remained on the porch for several minutes, processing the surreal contrast between my family's Thanksgiving narrative and the reality of what was happening in my professional life. When I returned inside, the conversation had moved to retirement planning and long-term financial security. Topics my relatives discussed with the authority of people who'd never questioned conventional wisdom about career development and wealth building. "Alex, everything okay with your computer work?" Mom asked with the patient concern she reserved for my tech problems. "Just some business decisions that need attention," I said, returning to my kitchen table. "That's the challenge with freelance work," James observed knowingly. "You're always at the mercy of client demands. No work-life balance. Freelance work. Client demands. As if I were a contract programmer taking on small projects rather than the CEO of a software company about to be acquired by Microsoft for 9 figures. My phone rang again, this time with a call I couldn't postpone. The caller ID showed Microsoft Acquisition Team, the direct line for the corporate development executives handling our transaction. "I need to take this call," I said, standing up from my kitchen table again. "Alex, seriously?" David protested. "We're trying to have family time here. Can't you turn off your phone for one afternoon?" But before I could step away, my assistant's voice came through the phone speaker at a volume that carried across the kitchen. "Alex, this is the Microsoft team calling about finalizing the $200 million TechFlow Solutions acquisition. Are you available to review the final terms?" The kitchen fell completely silent. "Did she just say $200 million? Monica asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Through the doorway, I could see the dining room conversation had stopped entirely. James was staring at me with an expression of complete confusion. "I'll take this call outside," I said, but James was already approaching from the dining room. "Alex, wait," he said, his voice carrying a tone I'd never heard from him before. "Did that woman just mention a $200 million acquisition?" The rest of my family was now gathering in the kitchen, their Thanksgiving celebration temporarily forgotten as they processed what they'd just overheard. "It's a business call," I said simply. "A $200 million business call?" David repeated, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by something approaching shock. Before I could respond, James pulled out his phone and began typing frantically. "TechFlow Solutions," he muttered. "Alex, is that your company name?" I watched him search for information about my failed app idea, his expression changing as search results loaded on his screen. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Alex, there are dozens of articles about TechFlow Solutions. Enterprise software, Fortune 500 clients, $50 million annual revenue. Resolution, recognition and recalibration." The Microsoft acquisition call continued on speakerphone as my family gathered around the kitchen table, listening to corporate development executives discuss terms for purchasing the computer hobby they'd been encouraging me to abandon. "Mr. Chen, we're prepared to finalize the acquisition at $200 million plus equity participation," the Microsoft executive said. "Your enterprise automation platform would become the cornerstone of our business process optimization suite." James was still scrolling through his phone, reading articles about TechFlow Solutions with increasing amazement. "Alex, Forbes named you one of the top enterprise software innovators under 30. The Wall Street Journal featured your company in their Emerging Technology Leaders section." "When?" Mom asked faintly. 6 months ago," James replied. "There are dozens of major publications covering TechFlow Solutions. Alex, you've built one of the most successful software companies in the automation sector." David was now searching on his own phone, his earlier confidence about traditional career superiority clearly shaken. "This TechCrunch article says TechFlow Solutions has 47 employees and clients in 12 countries. 47 employees? Dad repeated, speaking for the first time since overhearing the acquisition call. "Mr. Chen, are you still there?" the Microsoft executive asked through the phone speaker. I'm here, I replied. I'll need about an hour to review the final documentation with my legal team. Of course, we'll have everything prepared for your signature. Congratulations on building an extraordinary company. As I ended the call, my family stared at me with expressions ranging from shock to something that might have been shame. Alex, Mom said slowly, when you said you were working on an app, we thought you meant. You thought I meant a simple mobile application, I finished. I know what you thought. But $200 million, Monica whispered. For software you developed? For an enterprise automation platform that Fortune 500 companies use to optimize their business processes, I corrected. It's not an app, it's a comprehensive software solution that took 3 years to develop and deploy. James set down his phone with something approaching reverence. Alex, I owe you a massive apology. When I offered you IT support work at my firm, I had no idea you were running a company that Microsoft considers worth $200 million. The kitchen fell silent as the implications of the past hour began to sink in. Every assumption about my professional failure, every suggestion about finding stable employment, every placement at the kitchen table for disappointments, all of it had been based on their complete misunderstanding of what I'd actually accomplished. The Forbes 30 Under 30 list, Aunt Linda said, reading from James's phone. Alex, you're being recognized as one of the most innovative young entrepreneurs in technology. The kitchen table, David said quietly, looking at where I'd been sitting alone during their dining room celebration. Alex, we made you eat at the kitchen table while you were in the middle of a $200 million acquisition. You made me eat at the kitchen table because you decided I was unsuccessful without bothering to understand what I actually do, I replied. 3 weeks later, when the Microsoft acquisition was announced and featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal's business section, my family's group text exploded with congratulations and requests for copies of the newspaper. The same relatives who'd been offering me career advice were now asking if I needed employees. But the validation that mattered most came from the Fortune 500 clients whose business processes had been transformed by TechFlow solutions, and from the Microsoft executives who understood the technical complexity and market value of what I'd built. James's law firm hired me as their technology strategy consultant 6 months later, paying fees that exceeded his annual partner income for quarterly advisory sessions. David still talks about his promotion to regional vice president, but he's stopped giving me career advice. My parents replaced their kitchen table with a larger dining room set, ensuring there would always be room for everyone at the main table. But the physical furniture change couldn't undo the years of assumptions and dismissals that had led to that Thanksgiving morning when they made their disappointing son eat alone while he finalized a 9-figure acquisition. Sometimes the people closest to us are the last to recognize what we've accomplished. And sometimes it takes a $200 million Microsoft acquisition to make them realize that success doesn't always look the way they expected.